The White House said Monday it is considering stripping security clearances from some former officials. All of the people named by the administration as possible targets have criticized the president. CBS News Washington correspondent Paula Reid has the latest.
President Trump may strip security clearances from some of his most outspoken detractors, among them former FBI Director James Comey, former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, and former NSA Director Michael Hayden. He's also targeting former CIA Director John Brennan, who recently blasted the president over his summit with Vladimir Putin.
It's nothing short of treasonous.
Mr. Trump has publicly accused these former officials of spreading information from the ongoing special counsel investigation into Russian meddling in the U.S. election. Last week, in an interview with CBS News, the president called them out.
Do you think any intelligence agencies, U.S. intelligence agencies, are out to get you?
Well, certainly in the past, it's been terrible. You look at Brennan, you look at Clapper, you look at Hayden, you look at Comey, you look at McCabe, you look at Strzok and his lover, Lisa Page. You look at other people in the FBI that have been fired, that are no longer there.
It is common for senior government officials to maintain their high-level security clearances after they leave office. Clearances are renewed every 5 years and allow former officials to advise their successors. Security expert Frank Salufo says it's the public that could be hurt if the intelligence isn't shared.
So ultimately, it's the American people, because we're not going to be able to get the requisite knowledge that that these individuals have in their heads to be able to enhance our national security.
Joining me now is CBS News Washington correspondent Paula Reid. And Paula, I guess the first question, Sarah Huckabee Sanders said at the press conference Monday that these former officials have, quote, politicized and in some cases monetized their security clearances. What exactly is she referring to?
Well, she's referring to some of the president's most outspoken detractors. I mean, he is targeting a very specific group of people who have used their former roles as a platform to criticize the president and many of his decisions related to national security. Now, she is arguing, and the president has accused these officials of leaking, quote, secrets from the special counsel investigation. But there is no indication that any of these people have actually leaked classified information related to that investigation.
And Paula, no surprise, the possibility of revoking the security clearance has almost immediately prompted claims that the White House is targeting individuals who have spoken out against the president. What is the administration's response to this?
That's right. Well, they're arguing that they're abusing these clearances. They're not saying, yes, we're going after our detractors. We are going after people who abuse, who are profiting off of their clearances, and that's not right. But let's be clear, this is just a shiny object that they're sort of waving, something that's interesting. A lot of people don't know about it, will want to know more, in an effort to distract from a lot of the controversies that are swirling here at the White House. Most notably, a lot of these intelligence officials coming out and criticizing the way the president handled his Helsinki summit with President Vladimir Putin. So I think you saw them sort of attempt to shift the attention onto this issue of clearances. Late tonight, former FBI Director James Comey, he tweeted his response, and what he said was, look, you make a list of all the people that criticize the White House. Where is Putin? So he sort of made an effort to use his response to shift the focus right back to where he wants it, which is on Helsinki.
I want to switch topics now. There are at least 12 audio recordings that were seized and raised from President Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen. What have we learned so far about these tapes?
We know that only one of them is actually a conversation between Cohen and President Trump. And in that conversation, as we reported last week, they discuss a possible payment to former Playboy model Karen McDougal, who claims that she had an affair with the president. But what we don't know is specifically what they said about that payment and if any payment was actually made to her in addition to the money she received from the publisher of the National Enquirer. So, of course, the question is, well, who else is he recording? What are these other 11 tapes here that were seized in those April raids on his home? We don't actually know at this point who else he was recording. As
a result, what kind of political fallout have you seen from the investigation, or administration, I should say?
Well, I think there are concerns about the legal and political liability that Michael Cohen represents. I mean, this is a man who was his, quote, fixer, less than really his attorney, and he's privy to all the president's secrets. And it seems, based on his public statements, that he is increasingly willing to cooperate, perhaps, with prosecutors, because he is currently under criminal investigation and has quite the incentive to offer any information he has on the president in exchange for leniency in his own case. So these tapes, I mean, this was something that the president and his attorneys wanted to get get out in front of. You saw Giuliani talking about these last week. He waived privilege so that they could release this information, because it does appear that they are likely concerned about what else could come out of those raids from Cohen's home and office.
So, Paula, what is the next step for federal prosecutors who are investigating Michael Cohen?
Well, the investigation into Mr. Cohen goes on. At the end of this week, prosecutors will get a hold of those recordings, those 12 recordings, because privilege has been waived. The two sides have been going back and forth arguing over how much of the evidence seized in those April raids on Cohen's home and office, how much of that was privilege, how much of that was attorney-client privilege, or maybe even executive privilege, depending on what it was. And right now, they're just sort of arguing over what evidence they can actually have access to, and then they'll have to decide whether or not they want to charge Cohen. But sources close to the investigation tell me Cohen does expect to be charged, likely with some business crimes and possibly with some campaign finance violations, because as you may remember, he had sort of this large fund of money that he was keeping. He was paid by many companies. He was also using that same fund to pay out women who claimed to have affairs with then candidate and now President Trump. So it'll be interesting to see what, if anything, he is charged with.
All right, Paula Reid in Washington. Paula, thank you.